Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen. And, something that we've been talking about a lot is Australia's slow march, kind of quick these days, into a cashless society. That's a centrally planned cashless society, of course. And as this West Australian article says, cash purchase of more than 10,000 Australian dollars to be banned to stop organized crime. Australians who try to use more than $10,000 in cash to buy goods will be banned under a crackdown by the federal government aimed at stopping money launderers and organized crime. The government last night announced the plan to make it illegal to use more than $10,000 in cash to buy anything. Those wanting to spend up big will have to use either electronic transfer services or a check to make a purchase. Of course, so therefore everything will be tracked. And you know what? When they talk about organized crime, they mean the government crime racket? No, of course they don't mean that. They mean you trying to avoid getting stolen from with your hard-earned money that you worked really hard for by the organized crime cartel. So that's a big thing to point out. We've been talking about the cashless society for a long time here at WAM, and something that really stands out is that they'll be able to track your money everywhere. It's centrally planned, of course, legal tender. If your money's in the bank, it's not yours, it's the bank's. And if your money's always going through the banks via digital transactions, legal tender laws, it's all centralized, all that, then you never own your money. It's always the banks. And that is a form of enslavement, folks. That is how they really get you. That's how they can do bail-in regimes, have no runs on the banks, basically say, sorry, and it's gone. That is a huge problem. John, what do you think about this?
Well, I'm going to show some stats from the Royal Bank of Australia, the central bank over there. And what is interesting is, of course, they have a very high centralization of high denomination notes that they have issued into circulation. If you take a look at the $50 and $100 bills that they have, you actually see that it's 93% of all cash in circulation, all notes in circulation. That's a tremendous amount. That they could just suddenly say, like, oh yeah, and they talked about it. Remember, we were talking about how they're going to ban the 50 and 100. Yeah. Well, if they do that, they'll ban 93% of all cash in existence. It would be a huge attack on anybody's, freedom to transact freely without getting tracked everywhere they go. Now, of course, they've been continuing to issue currency throughout the years and notes. So it's not been on the slow side. Actually, it was a record year, 2016-17. We don't have the current numbers that's going to come out for this year, but they actually issued $346 million of new notes into circulation. If you look at the early year, you look at 2015-16, it was 129, then it was 166 million the year before that, and 30 million. So they were kind of slow. So I guess there was needed, probably a lot of them got worn down and had to be used in circulation, because a lot of people want to use cash. There's a huge cash economy, especially among the people that don't have a lot of money.
And on the free market, some might call it a black market, but I'd say it's the only thing that's free anymore because people have been driven underground due to crazy amounts of prohibition.
Well, yeah, and if you look at some of these countries that have the highest black market, free market, as Josh said, they are the highest tax countries. Like Norway is up there, a whole bunch of other of the Scandinavian countries. And of course, it is because people don't want to pay, taxes. Looking at my dad, for example, in Norway, he pays 51% taxes on his income. That's the government taking more money than he gets to keep. That's insane.
Or in Canada, it's to, pay off the interest on the debt when they create fiat out of nothing. So, it's important to also mention that this is out of desperation in a lot of ways, because we've seen over the years, as they're trying to push interest rates up to stop them from going negative, which they will inevitably be. They try to push forward a cashless system because it makes them more secure and us less secure, and us more of a debt slave. So we've seen similar things in India, where they banned black markets, gave homeless people bank accounts as a term of good. They're trying to be nice to the homeless people. Meanwhile, now they're all traceable, and now they're all taxable, and now they're all able to be basically stolen from much more easily. But then we also see similar things. Well, first of all, I should mention the Aadhaar system with retina scans and all that kind of stuff in India. But we also see China. We also see Sweden. There's so many other examples in the world. Canada is getting there. The United States is getting there.
Yeah, actually, I highly suggest you look at a Steemit article that I just recently wrote that talks about this. And what I go through there, actually I found that Norway and Sweden was the countries that have attacked cash the most in the world. I couldn't find, of course, anything on China, which is interesting. Very interesting over there, of course. And then India was India. They had just issued a whole bunch of they still had their 200 rupee notes. 2,000 rupee notes, and then they still had others. So they kind of like epically failed on trying to ban cash in India.
Yeah, and let's not forget in Australia about those facial recognition passports we've been talking about for about 2 years. Of course, they're not forced yet, but it's basically people are being shifted slowly over towards the facial recognition passports, and that's a huge issue as well. I mean, it's getting to a point where people are paying to get on public trains in Sweden with chips in their hands. That's a real thing. We've reported on it. People are doing it as a hobby, as the transhumanists and stuff, putting chips in their hand to pay for things. And, we're already being conditioned when we put our hand out to tap our debit or credit card.
There is an RFID in that credit card or in that debit card that you have. Yeah. That's the same as the one that it would put into you.
Yeah, so it's getting really bad, folks. So the point is, all fiat currency eventually reverts to its true value of zero. It always has, it always will, going back to 1024 AD in China. And, of course, when it all comes down, they're trying to be desperate and push for their centralized cashless society, and of course implemented it into the SDR, the special drawing rights, at the IMF, and that is a big plan, a big plot that they've been looking towards for a long time. Yeah, we've all seen that magazine article, 2018, with the phoenix rising from the ashes, and the SDR.
Yeah, well, look at Garrett Cohn. Of course, he just recently came out and said that he believed that it would be a world cryptocurrency, but of course he said it's not going to be Bitcoin. No. And that's probably where it gets it from, seeing that they have the plans. And when you look at how they wanted to push the SDR as a world reserve currency, well, it's pretty obvious that they're going to use the new blockchain technology to implement their centralized control. If you don't believe that they're going to ban cash anywhere, I got a story. Actually, my sister lives in Sweden, in Malmö, and she was telling me when she goes out anywhere, except for the only place that she had found that they take cash now is the grocery store. Everywhere else, if you go to bars, if you take any transportation or anything, or if you go to any other stores, they very rarely take cash. Like, it's mostly banned, like not banned, but it's mostly you're not able to use Swedish krona.
I've actually been to a few bars. I don't go to bars that often, unfortunately. I'm working most of the time. But I've been to a few bars where they get you that you can only use your debit card or credit card, and they force you to tip them. And if you're buying like one beer and you tip them, then you buy another beer and you tip them. You have to tip them every time. They're just pouring it into a glass. Like, I'm all good with tipping bartenders and everything, but like every single time, it's like, oh man, this is really annoying. And airports too are getting so crazy where, I mean, just think of the logic of this. So they say it's unsecure to keep cash in an airport, the most secure places in the world. And on top of that, you have to go to Wells Fargo ATM or something like that, take out cash, then go upstairs. This is Las Vegas, for example, put money into the Visa prepaid thing. Cash, they don't take debit at the Visa prepaid thing. You put the cash in there, which they have to collect, by the way, Brinks and all these other companies, and then it spits out a credit card after your feed for the ATM and then your feed again for the credit card machine. It's just so ridiculous. It's getting so insane. Convenience, I think not. Of course, that is always the kind of sheepskin that they carry to bring in this kind of complex.
And also try to go to your bank and try to get out any cash. Like I did, of course, another article that I did on
insolvent.
Yeah, banks are insolvent. I did that on all the biggest banks in the world, but I also did it on the Canadian banks. That's how I started. And I found, that there's not very much cash versus the actual deposits. Now, of course, the banks would come out and claim and say that I was a fraud, saying that, we can just easily transfer our short-term treasuries over. And then I said, well, listen, what if you come to a currency and debt crisis? Those treasuries that you hold in your local currency, if it's the Canadian bonds, the US Treasury, whatever it is, that's not going to be worth very much if you look at history. And then, of course, they never get back to you and try to rebut that, because they'd probably be like, oh, maybe I should take a look at monetary history and understand how my bank works.
Actually, I was talking to a guy at a bank today, just before we did these videos, and he started saying, yeah, Bitcoin's looking great. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the year. I'm sure it's going to go up and everything. And he totally knew what was going on with fiat and everything, because I mentioned, like, I want to get rid of this paper. Anyway, I haven't actually had a chance to tell him about that yet. But it's really crazy, though, because, you're thinking about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and stuff. There's no benefit for the global establishment, for the government or the banking system to power the world reserve currency on decentralized cryptocurrency. It doesn't make sense. So again, people keep mixing up cryptocurrency, blockchain, digital currency, and Bitcoin. They're not all synonymous. They have relations to each other, but they're not synonymous. You can use blockchain when centralized to enslave humanity. You can use blockchain when decentralized to overthrow that which enslaves humanity. That is such an important point to make. So, John, I wanted to send it to you. Bottom line.
Well, bottom line is, I think the future that we're heading towards is probably somewhat cashless, because we're so highly technologically now that we are moving in that direction, and there's no doubt about it. And I believe that, of course, I'm working on my new book, where I'm gonna end up, is are we heading for a future of enslavement or a future of complete freedom? That's the two choices that we have, and that's, of course, the centralized now crypto blockchain that they are proposing, that they want to implement into their lives, into our lives. To just withdraw, take our cash. Suddenly, it could be a bank crisis, like Simon Dixon said. Suddenly they would just let the banks go to waste, and then it'd be like, hey, come into the new system, and you get all your money, but it's going to be cashless. You're not going to have any of that in your possession anymore. So that's a potential. But then, of course, we got the true decentralized blockchains out there. Now, of course,
freedom.
Yeah. Now, of course, there is issues with that they could, depending on the processing power, they could centralize it. But there's also other, coins out there that are starting to eviscerate that. And then I'm very excited about the future.
Yeah, the market's always innovating faster than the criminals try to innovate in their direction. So it's important to, mention. Also 95% of cryptocurrencies are terrible. So it's important to mention that. But there are some really great ones, and they're exactly the free market competing currency system that we've been waiting for.
Banksters, we're coming for you. You're gonna lose big time. Or your Ponzi scheme is over.
Yeah. Decentralize, and of course diversify with gold and silver too. That's my opinion. Very
important.
It's always good to mention that, because people rag on us if we don't mention that. I love gold and silver, so let's not go there. Cash is great. Physical cash is great if it's actually got fundamental value based on scarcity, application, demand. As the same goes for cryptocurrencies as well. So thanks for going into this with us, John. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth,
be the change.
Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized and censored by YouTube, as the ADL comes in and flags all of our content as hate speech. Also, check our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also find us at steemit.com at Josh Sigurdson, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post in Steem, the cryptocurrency. And also find us at the Red Pill Expo, which we have a reference link for below in the description and the comments as well. Hosted by G. Edward Griffin. Amazing speakers coming out to speak this year. Don't miss it. It's in Spokane, Washington, June 21st to 23rd. We hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.